had a grim decade as shoppers deserted to out-of-town supermarkets, shopping malls and retail parks. Consumers are attracted by the warmth and convenience of everything under one roof. Shopkeepers in town see the spectre of terminal decline. The government will shortly issue new planning guidelines designed to halt the rush to build out of town. But a number of towns in Britain are already studying an American scheme to save the city centre. Niels Blythe reports.
Ward's clothes shop isn't the only casualty here. 15 of the 50 shops on Gravesend High Street are now empty. What was once a busy shopping street looks in parts like a war zone. And each boarded-up shopfront makes life harder for its neighbours. Selling cake decorations and cards was once a thriving business for Yvonne Howland. Now she finds the high street intimidating, and she too wants to get out.
Well, we've had the windows smashed 6 times last year, 4 times just to smash the windows and twice to actually break in. I close at 4 o'clock every day because the majority of our customers are women and they don't like walking down this high street because it's so deserted.
Not many high streets have declined as obviously as Gravesend, but lots of traditional town centres are finding life increasingly difficult. The pattern of events is always the same. The big stores move to the edge of town, shoppers come to the centre less often, and a spiral of decline begins. The nightmare is that it ends with streets that look like this. Cars have changed the way we shop. Edge-of-town supermarkets, retail parks, and just across the Thames from Gravesend, there's one of the biggest shopping malls in Britain, Lakeside. It has all the things which have made out-of-town shopping so successful. A planned mixture of shops, entertainment for children, safe surroundings and fast food. Even cinemas for when you've shopped till you dropped. And Gravesend now faces a double whammy. Head back across the QE2 bridge from Lakeside, and right next to the town, they're building Blue Water, yet another shopping centre. In less than 3 years' time, this former chalk pit will be the largest shopping mall in Europe. It could be one of the last of its kind. Planning rules have been changed to make out-of-town development more difficult in future, but there's still a lot of building underway across the country.
We have 3 department stores anchoring the scheme: Marks and Spencer's, John Lewis and House of Fraser. And in between, there'll be 250 other stores in a triangular mall joining all 3 department stores, with the parking and the landscaping going right up to the edge of the buildings.
The impact of out-of-town shopping is now monitored in detail by experts like Nicholas Falk. Not all Gravesend has done as badly as the old high street, but he believes the problems facing town centre shops require urgent attention.
If we don't do a lot more than we're doing at the moment, we'll see many more shops and businesses close. We'll see an awful lot of jobs lost in the process. We'll see the heart of our towns dying, and we'll see places that become frightening to go into by day and by night.
And in the search for solutions to the town centre crisis, Nicholas Falk and others are turning their attentions abroad.
26 degrees, KYW News, this traffic and transit update. Infiniti brings back $399 a month with no down payment. In Philadelphia, the chess match between man and machine resumes. It's all tied.
Philadelphia, USA. An unlikely place to look for lessons on reviving the British high street. After all, American inner cities are famous for dirt and decay, and they used to call this Filthydelphia. But now the shopping streets are so spick and span, the pigeons can't find a decent breakfast.
To show where the locations of aggressive panhandling and on-street feeding are and correlate that.
Paul Levy leads the team that's transformed the area known as Centre City. While he holds his regular morning meeting, his hit squads are already at work. On these once mean streets, graffiti is blown away as soon as it appears. And on almost every corner, there's a cleaner sweeping litter or cigarette ends.
Okay, assignments. Morley, 632. Garrett, 636. Reisinger, 638.
Roll call in the police precinct, and the officers are getting their assignments for the day. But standing behind them are Paul Levy's team of community service representatives. They also patrol the streets, unarmed, but a uniformed force to reassure the shoppers.
Sent letters to all the hotel general managers who've given us their complaints.
It's a never-ending campaign for Paul Levy, and it's all paid for by local shops and property owners determined to improve their district.
Here in 5 minutes. We'll be here in 5 minutes.
On the streets, the patrolmen don't act like police, but they can call the cops at the first hint of trouble.
I'm not talking to you. I'm a man of God. Don't play with me. That was a lie. Stop the Sam.
Wherever there's a disturbance, they turn up in numbers to make shoppers feel as safe as they would in one of the 17 shopping malls which surround Center City.
We're constantly in competition with privately controlled spaces that are in out-of-town shopping centers that are private property, very clean, very secure, and so people are constantly comparing. Well, I can shop in the shopping center and park for free and be in a completely enclosed space, which is private property with security guards, or I can walk in the town center where there's litter on the street and I don't feel safe and it's not well lit. So we are constantly comparing ourselves against the out-of-town shopping centers.
The next phase for Paul Levy is a project to smarten the sidewalks.
The philosophy of this project is not going to be to rip up every sidewalk in Center City if it's already in good condition. We want to carry out a conservation strategy, and we've tried out here on our demonstration.
The money to pay for all the Center City improvements is raised by a special kind of tax. It had to be approved by a vote among local property owners. But in a country where tax cutting is a national obsession, it's won almost unanimous support. Philadelphia is one of the pioneers of the so-called business improvement districts. Now hundreds of towns across America are following its example. And the supporters of these schemes argue that the secret of their success is the special tax. Once it's been agreed, every business in the area has to pay it. And that, it's claimed, is the only way that you can create the kind of big budgets that are needed if town centers are going to compete with out-of-town shopping. In Philadelphia, the Center City scheme has led to a fall in the number of empty shops in the area. And for shopkeeper Nancy Gold, it's made all the difference.
If it hadn't changed, I would not have invested and moved into what we call here the high rent district. If we hadn't done it, I'm clear that we would have seen the demise of the inner city. We saved the city. There's no question that Center City was saved by this tax.
Sprucing up the streets now goes on round the clock. And in Philadelphia, they believe there are useful lessons that Britain could learn.
Out-of-town shopping centers are far better funded than town centers. And if town centers cannot put in place a funding mechanism to equal that, they're going to lose their competitive edge. I think secondly, businesses need to understand that this is not a charitable contribution. This is a business investment to improve the business environment, which has really reaped dividends for businesses here in Philadelphia.
The Philadelphia story is now set to become a model for some British cities.
What we're looking at here is a public space that isn't a public
This is Bristol, and John Lever is on secondment from Marks & Spencer's to act as town centre manager. His job is to plan a high street fight back against a huge shopping centre now being built outside the city. Local retailers have seen the effect of these developments elsewhere and are preparing their defences.
This is basically the centre of Broadmead. It's called the podium area. We have a completely new re-landscaping, repaving scheme, which will be most attractive finished by April. That's phase one.
To be ready for the competition, John Lever needs to raise £12 million, half of it coming from the private sector. It's not just for smartening up the public areas. He wants uniformed wardens, as in Philadelphia, better use of car parks, and a new street market to make the most of a historic setting.
I think because of the out-of-town experience in other centres around the UK and in America, retailers now realise they have to band together, work together to have a united force that can tackle some of these issues.
But while the principle is simple, raising the money in British town centres is complicated. John Lever spends most of his time passing the hat round local businesses.
Cameras are approximately £8,000 each, but it's the old story, can we get enough money raised?
Do you think that you can carry on in the way that you are of relying solely on voluntary contributions?
No, voluntary contributions are not the answer to a scheme as large as this, and they're not the answer to city centres in the future where you have to raise substantial levels of money to be able to maintain and improve the facilities and the environment for the public. You have to find a more imaginative way of dealing with it.
John Lever is backing a Philadelphia-style business improvement tax. British law doesn't allow this kind of specialised local tax at the moment, but with the future of town centre shopping in the balance, some of the biggest names in British business think it's time for a change.
It's no good Marks and Spencer or anyone else who's really interested in driving its business forward, sitting back waiting for government or the local authority on their own to come and deal with the problems which we beset every day in the high street. We've got to get our sleeves rolled up and get stuck in and find our own solutions and try to work towards those solutions.
So would you give your support to an extra tax if that's what it takes?
If it was proven that there was need for extra tax of a limited nature, so that we're not signing an open blank cheque, and that was the only way to make sure that town centre improvements were funded satisfactorily on a long-term basis, then yes, we would support it.
Businesses in town centres have got to now collectively match much higher standards that are provided out of town, which means they've got to act together, not against each other. It means, if you like, they've got to hang together rather than hanging separately.
So the message is cooperate or die?
Absolutely.
In Gravesend, the message of cooperation is well understood. Yvonne Howland from the Cake Shop has joined a business pressure group. But unlike Bristol, with its prosperous city centre, small retailers in Gravesend have little money to spare. The idea of paying for town centre revival gets a mixed reaction.
It's in all our interests at the end of the day to help finance whatever's necessary to keep any town safe, because at the end of the day it's our own interest we're looking after.
We desperately need the town centre management influence so that we're moving in the same direction, and this is all a question of funding. But clearly no one wants to pay more taxes. We're trying to recover literally and hold our own in face of competition from the superstores and the out-of-town shopping centres.
The day after this meeting, yet another business closed on Gravesend High Street, forced out by lack of trade. With the threat from out of town still growing, town centres are recognising they need new ways of meeting the challenge. The danger is that the remedies will come too late for many of today's town centre businesses.